Our agenda is to approve the Finance Committee minutes from last month. I'd like to motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Have a second. Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, hearing none, those minutes are now approved. And we'll move on to our first briefing item, which is the 2023 Financial Audit Report. And Crow is going to give us that update.
Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm excited to be here to walk through the audit results for the current fiscal year. We'll go through some of the key details of the audit, walk through some of the objectives of the audit, how we approached it, our timeline, and then finish up with the risks, materiality, a discussion on the ending financial statement amounts, as well as some required communications. So we'll start off with a little bit about our client service team. The individuals here, myself as the engagement partner representing in Crow here today to walk through everything. We also had repeating senior manager and senior staff on the engagement. So both Dan and Stacy were on the job last year and continued again with this year. It was nice to have the continuity for another year in order to help know the right people to go to for questions and continue to just dig into some of the other items and issues to really get to know SORTA at a deeper level this year. When we think about the audit and the audit process, there's a few things that we like to cover just to make sure everyone's on the same page with roles and responsibilities. So, of course, this committee is charged with the oversight of the audit in total, understanding the basis for the audit, and then the conclusions of the audit, while management is the group that's actually in charge of preparing those financial statements. They're responsible for the amounts that are presented, as well as the internal control policies and procedures that are put in place to make sure that the financial statements are maturely stated and accurate. And then we come in as auditors to double check what management has done and to provide that feedback to this group. So the objectives of our audit is really to express an opinion on the financial statements, that everything is materially correct. As we go through that, we're testing to make sure the amounts presented in both the note disclosures as well as the face of the financial statements are accurate. We do follow auditing standards accepted in the United States, and we also complete this audit under government auditing standards. And that's really due to the second piece of the audit that we'll talk about, and that is the single audit, which is the audit of federal funds. Due to the amount of federal funds that you receive, you're required to have an audit done on those federal funds, and we do test compliance and controls over that portion of your expenses as well. As we go through, we are looking at controls. We're trying to understand and make sure they're reasonable, that they are proper, and that there's no deficiencies within that control structure where something or a mistake or an error might slip through without being identified through the management process. When I talk a little bit about our scope and deliverables here, these are the different items that we will issue at the end of the process. So we'll have our independent auditor's report over the financial statements, as well as our independent auditor's report over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. And this is where we would identify any internal control weaknesses that we found as we went along. If there's something that we also felt like should be improved, but maybe not rising to the level to be included within that opinion, we could also issue a management comments letter. So just a quick summary of our approach as we go through. At all times, we're really questioning management, pushing back, just not always accepting exactly what we're told. We're asking for that supporting documentation to support their position and the amounts that they've given to us and presented to us. Planning used to be something that we just did at the beginning. What has happened as audits have evolved over time is that we've realized that planning is really a continuous process. As we go through and as we test things, we might find additional risks, and that we update our planning and continue to incorporate those on. Some of the more significant areas that we spend additional time on is really in the grant revenue area to make sure that that grant revenue is reported properly and recognized when it should be. Sales and use tax revenue due to dollar amount. Same as capital assets, a large amount of capital assets and making sure they're being reported properly, as well as the pension and OPEB asset and liabilities. A quick summary of our timeline. We're here now in May to do this presentation, but we really have started way back in the November and December timeframe when we began with some interim work, where we began to understand what had happened over here for the entire year, what big transactions took place, what control structure changes, what type of different grants you may have received during the year. And then we continued that through the November-December timeframe until March and April. And in March and April, that's when we really began our year-end substantive testing. We obtained some year-end amounts from management and began to complete the procedures over those amounts. And now we're in May and June where we're wrapping up the reporting process. One of the requirements under auditing standards is to identify significant risks to the Finance Committee. And as we went through the audit, we do identify a few, and both of these are required by auditing standards to be significant risks. So all audits have these. The first one is the presumed management override of controls. So we have to understand where management could potentially override controls and make sure that we do testing around that. And the second one is over revenue recognition. What is in place to make sure revenue is recognized properly, not too early, not too late, but really when it meets all the criteria. And this is especially true around grant revenue. I did want to point out that in our materiality, we do take both qualitative and quantitative figures into account. So we're looking at what the amounts are on the financial statements to determine that amount, as well as what may have happened that could influence or be a risk as we go through things. So one thing to point out is this year we had an additional grant that we tested as part of the single audit, the FRA grant, which is different than what we've done in the past. So that would also influence our materiality around that grant revenue testing to make sure it's accurate. Now that being said, we don't test every transaction as we go through the audit. It really is an audit. We do pick a sample, though, of both high dollar transactions and low dollar transactions. So it is spread out throughout that and all the population that's out there. When I look at our other required communications, this is where we look at, and we'll talk about some weaknesses in internal control here in a few minutes, but if there was anything else in any of these boxes, we would have brought this to the Finance Committee's attention as soon as we had identified it. But as we went through the process, we did not become aware of any fraudulent activity or have any concerns around illegal acts or significant noncompliance with any of your grants as we went through that process. Just as a reminder, fraud is always difficult to find in the audit process. Really, the number one way to find fraud is by your employees and by management. It's whistleblowers within the organization. That being said, we do take it into account. We do brainstorm on how it could happen, and we perform additional procedures around different areas as we see different risks arise, whether it's due to the economy, due to a change in personnel, due to a change in procedures. All of those things are what we're looking at where there's an opportunity for fraud. So with that, I'm going to jump into a little bit about the results for the fiscal year. Here we have a condensed summary of the financial statements as of December 31st. And you can see that we have 2022 and 2021 presented as well. You'll notice that it says as restated. And I wanted to point out that it's restated due to the implementation of a new GASB during this fiscal year, not due to an error or a correction. There was a new GASB that was implemented, and due to that, the numbers in the previous years are required to be restated. So you'll see that current assets increased by about $19 million, and that's really driven by the increase in investments for the fiscal year. You had a significant increase in overall investments, and that increased by about $30 million that's included within this category. It was offset by a slight decrease in receivables of about $10 million from the previous year, and that's really just due to timing of when reimbursements were submitted and then received from the federal government. Non-current assets increased by about $33 million due to an increase again here of about $45 million in investments and in your portfolio. And there was a decrease of about $12 million in the net OPEB asset. So really, when we look at the amounts, the main reason for that increase over the prior year comes down to that change in your investments activity for the year. When we look at the liability side, we see here there's a pretty significant increase, not in the current liabilities, but in the non-current liabilities. The current liabilities decreased slightly, and that's really just due to timing of payments of when bills came in and when that payment cycle happened at year end. But the increase in the non-current liabilities is really due to the increase in the net pension liability of about $93 million. And the net pension liability is nothing that you have control over here at the organizational level. It really is amounts that are coming from the pension plan and really based on their investment strategy, the assumptions that they use when developing that liability, and then how it gets allocated out to all the participants within that plan. So I hate to say it's not a cash-based number for you with this liability. It will be paid down over many, many years, and it's not something that in the next year, all of a sudden you're going to have to pay down that additional $93 million. When we look at the income statement side, we see that the operatings increased just over $1 million, and that's really just due to the change in passenger fares for the fiscal year. We did have that larger increase in operating expenses, and that's really increased about $63 million again due to that change in that net pension liability. So you'll see it increase on that end, and then it also has to then change in the income statement. So that's what's causing that increase. So it's not a cash-based adjustment again. It's really a book-based adjustment. The one cash basis adjustment or increase over the prior year that I wanted to point out was really you had about $9 million in payments in the current fiscal year for your infrastructure program. And that's where you have restricted revenues coming in and you have those restricted payments going out. So that's really you just spending restricted money in the manner that it was meant to be spent. When we look at the non-operating revenue and expenses here, there is a slight increase of about $10 million in total, and really $9 million of that relates to your investment income, which makes sense. If you have a large increase in your investments on the balance sheet, hopefully you're getting a good return on that money, and that you do see that increase here on this side. So your increase in your investment income is really due to just the increase in your balances of investments at year end. So we'll go through here just a few other required communications. You'll see as we finish up the financial statements, significant accounting policies are very similar to prior year. No significant changes there. There was the adoption of the new accounting standard, GASB 96. And what this is saying is that if you have long-term IT arrangements, those should be recorded as a liability on the balance sheet so that people are aware of these longer-term arrangements. Similar to how leases are structured. If it was a physical asset, they're saying a similar approach should be taken to IT arrangements. So previously, these were just expensed as they were incurred, but if you have an agreement that's longer than a year, they have now been included as a payable. When we look at management's judgments and accounting estimates, these are the more significant ones that we take a look at. Fair value of a securities, we want to make sure that all of those are appropriately valued, that you're looking at the capital lives, the useful lives, the capital assets, as well as the assumptions around the pension and OPEB plans. As we went through the audit this year, we had 2 corrected misstatements that we worked with management on to update for the financial statements. The first adjustment was to remove grant revenue and a receivable for a federal award. 2 years ago, I think it's 2 years ago now, there was a change in accounting policy and procedures that was put out by the GASB that said you cannot recognize grant revenue and receivable until you have the fully executed award in hand. And unfortunately, the Federal Transportation Administration is not the quickest with signing their federal awards. They give you the money, they promise you the money, but then it takes a long process for them to actually sign the actual document. So in this case, you have everything leading up to the award saying that you're going to get this money, except for that final signed document. So as a result, grant receivables were decreased by about $13.5 million and grant revenue by that same amount on the draft financial statements that we were provided by management. And then our second adjustment that we recorded as part of the audit relates to restricted infrastructure revenues. So there is a delay when you receive the sales tax revenue from when it comes into the city and then gets transferred over to you. And you recognize that revenue as soon as it is yours. So even though you don't have it in hand yet, you've earned it and someone owes it to you to get paid. So we found that the main bulk of the sales tax revenue was recorded as a receivable, but the restricted portion was left out. So as we went through, we suggested an entry to post that $7 million as revenue and receivable as well. There were no uncorrected misstatements as we went through the process and no other significant issues to bring to your attention on the financial audit side. As you can see here, the opinion that we will be issuing is an unmodified opinion, which means we were able to find support for all of the financial statements, amounts, and note disclosures. It's really the top opinion that you can get. No qualifications, no exceptions to that opinion. And then to finish up here on the presentation, there's a few different items that I wanted to walk through that we found as we went through the control process. We'll be having a significant deficiency in controls for that first item that I talked about, which is that $7 million adjustment for the restricted receivable. And then the other thing that we identified, and this is really for a new grant program for SORTA related to FRA, is that when we were testing the reporting process, what we found is that the same person who was completing the reports was also then submitting them without a secondary review. And in the internal control process, you should have someone review it who's not involved in the preparation in order to catch any sort of errors. So we've brought that up to management that that would be something that should be reviewed and updated in their processes. And then finally, the last one is the material weakness for the federal grant revenue being included within the financial statements when it should not have been included until that final grant award was received and executed. The last item here that we have is our independence communications that as we went through, we're always making sure that we have no items that we need to bring to your attention that would be or impair our independence, and we have no other activity to report with SORTA that would be an issue that would cause an independence concern. So that's a new required item to make sure that you're aware of. So I'll go ahead and stop there and see if there are any questions or any clarification that I can provide to any of the information that I've touched on here.
Quick question on the process, the review. Is that a policy procedure or is it an opening that needed to be filled?
It's a procedure.
Okay, so that's being updated. Okay. Anybody else?
Any other questions?
I'm curious about the $7 million. That's part of the TIF funds. So I don't know. I guess I didn't fully understand what that $7 million was.
Me too.
What was that again?
7 million.
For
The infrastructure.
for the 7 million?
Yeah.
So the
And
7
maybe it's just context of the Hamilton County sales tax and how we record it. And it comes up in here pretty frequently. We just try to understand the best how we record it financially, what's restricted, what's not. If you could elaborate, if it's your role to elaborate on that a little bit, it would help us. Thank you.
So normally what happens is when it's coming in, it's recorded as revenue, and then at year end, there's a receivable that has to be recorded for the amounts that have not yet been received by SORTA. And it looks like that piece was missed by management when they recorded the other portion. So I think it was just an error.
Timing.
So the
Yeah.
Right,
okay.
correct. So we accrue the revenue, we're 3 months behind.
Yes.
So the calendar year ended, if I understand it correctly.
12/31, yep.
Right, 12/31, and there are 3 months of actual revenue that come in. We recorded that for the SORTA portion of the Hamilton County sales tax, but we just left the accrued number, the estimated number for the last 3 months in the financial statement for the MTIF. And so the 7 million is a true up of those things?
Correct. So for example, in December, people are buying things and a portion of that sales tax comes to SORTA, but they're collected by the retailer in December. And then in January, by the end of January, they're then due to the state. And then they do their audits and their review of it, and then it takes another month or two for it then to actually physically be sent here. So it was earned in December, but you're not receiving the receipts until March. So because there's that time lag, you've earned it, you just don't have the cash yet. So it wasn't recorded properly when we did our subsequent review of cash receipts and saw that the $7 million was really what you should have received and gotten, but wasn't recorded yet on the books.
That makes sense.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
report. Up next, we have Clark Schaefer for a cybersecurity assessment.
Chairperson, if I may, really quickly, just to provide some context. We are about to transition in terms of the agenda items here, right? The financial audit that you just received is required by the state and the federal government. As a public agency, we are required to go through this external audit that was provided by Crow. The next 4 items on the agenda are our internal audit pieces, and these are not required by the federal government or the state. It's best practice for us internally to review our own work. So we use a combination of internal staff, Norman Bowie and his team, and Clark Schaefer to do these internal audits to make sure that we were working through best practices. And I just kind of wanted to highlight that difference as we transition to the next 4 items on the agenda.
Good morning. I'm Kelsey Lichtefeld. I'm one of the managers in risk and controls at Clark Schaefer Consulting. It looks like we have the cybersecurity assessment pulled up. I believe that report is actually going to be presented in the June meeting. So if it's all right, if we go ahead, go to the grants management. I think there might have been some communication issues with presentations for the IT report. All righty. So pivoting. Working on grants management. So basically, we came in and performed the grants management audit in 2020. So we were assigned to do it again this year. The purpose of the audit was to examine SORTA's grant management processes, including, organizational policies and procedures, making sure they were clearly established, whether the grant administration group had sufficient control activities, to ensure their objectives were achieved, as well as to execute those control activities as intended. So overall, we determined, the group executes controls as intended. However, there were 3 areas for improvement that we think would help reduce risk within the organization, and these included periodic policy and procedure, as well as job description review. In addition, consolidating the grant management procedures documentation. So high level, I'll be going through scope, methodology, and then our findings as well. The audit scope period this go around was calendar year 2023. And so the review of this examination really was to focus on the current policies and procedures in place, and we performed limited sample-based testing. The areas that we looked at were grant applications and awards, tracking of appropriations, grant drawdowns, expenditures, the reporting, and the closeout process. We also followed up on our prior year audit observation from 2020 to make sure that it was appropriately remediated. From a methodology standpoint, we performed inquiry, observation, inspection to make sure the control structures for the management processes within the grant function were appropriately applied. So with this, we conducted our process walkthroughs and inquiries with key personnel. We inspected documentation and performed sample-based testing on the previously mentioned areas of review noted above in the scoped section. We also reviewed the current policies and procedures in place to determine whether they were comprehensive in nature, wanted to ensure, they're reflective of the true processes in place, And periodic review and approval is important as well with SORTA's initiative. So that was another aspect of this engagement. Again, we conducted our follow-up of the 2020 engagement, and we performed inquiries and inspection of the documentation to ensure that the grant management team was sufficiently qualified to manage the critical functions. Listed below, you'll see a table of our audit methodology and risk rankings. There was 1 low observational finding and 2 informational. We do require management responses for everything low and above. Informational is more of process improvement opportunities, best practices, just so SORTA is aware of other instances that we found. From a low ranking perspective, it's not a large immediate risk, but the improvements would still be possible. So our low risk observation had to do with policy and procedure review and approval. As you all know, SORTA's undergone a wide organizational initiative to update policies and procedures and to make sure that they're reviewed and approved periodically to be in alignment with industry best practices. During our review, we found that the overarching grant management manual lacked a formal evidence of periodic review and approval. The last revision date was in March of 2021. We did discuss with process owners, and it was mentioned that it was reviewed earlier this year. However, there was no formal audit trail of this occurring. So, the risk with that would be increase of information captured would be outdated, which could lead to operational inefficiencies or misunderstandings of internal processes throughout the organization, potential noncompliance with laws and regulations. So to remediate this, we recommend, implementing an annual review and also having that formally captured to have a better audit trail, whether that's a revisions table or something of that nature. So the grant management team did agree with our observation. They're going to be performing a periodic management review and establish a revisions table, and this should all be updated by Q2 of this year. All right, now we're going to jump into the informational findings. This one, number 2, particularly relates to the job descriptions for updates and approvals. This did not necessitate a testing exception for the reason that through other inquiry and inspection, we were able to determine within reasonable bounds that the grant management team was sufficiently staffed and qualified to manage the process in and of itself. However, when we were reviewing the job descriptions, we noted all of them were up to date with the exception of the Senior Manager of Grant Development and Administration role. So with this, when we were looking at the job description, it was last formally updated in 2019, and some of the roles and responsibilities listed for oversight was not appropriate anymore when you're looking at the org chart and the updates to the group, as well as not all of the roles and responsibilities were comprehensive or completely accurate for the role at this point in time during the examination scope period. So with that, we did a little further digging. It looks like they are in the process of updating this job description currently and the role title. So there is an active draft in place that we've reviewed. However, it's still going under SORTA's review to be finalized and then go through the final review and approval process. So it is in motion. Just wanted to call it out to everyone's attention during the scope period. So as you all know, the risk associated with not having reporting responsibilities appropriately, accurately, or completely identified, that could lead to critical job functions being misaligned with expectations, operational inefficiencies, business disruptions, and ultimately, those individuals could have performance retention issues, legal issues, and inefficient recruitment results. So wanted to put this on the radar of SORTA. Our recommendation would, implement a periodic review and approval of all job descriptions to make sure they're relevant of, responsibilities in place and comprehensive over time. So, and then the next step would be to push out this final job description and get that reviewed and approved timely. Finally, we can hit on the second informational finding, which relates to the procedures manual around the grant management process. So when we were reviewing the documents provided, it was identified that details relating to the overarching grant function were embedded throughout multiple different documents. So, it was the grants management manual, it was the AP policy, the fixed asset manual, and other procedures. And so with that, it can introduce risks of lack of centralized access, version control issues, compliance and audit concerns. So our recommendation really was just to pick out the pieces and house all critical details within one comprehensive document, and or work with all parties to make sure there's not overlap between different policies and procedures so that there's one standard document for record retention purposes. So that was a lot. That's kind of my spiel. Does anyone have any comments or questions on anything we've gone over with the report? Well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, up next, we have the MTIF audit recap, and Norman is out today, so Andy's gonna take us through this.
All right, thank you. We'll stay at a high level. I want to start by turning this over to Khaled Shamout, who can talk a little bit about the MTIF program and why we conducted the audit.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So back in 2020, we passed the levy, as you all know, and it stipulated that we have to dedicate 0.2 cents to the Transit Infrastructure Fund. And so we created that program pretty much from scratch, but not completely from scratch because we took the integrating committee guidelines and we changed that to meet our needs and make it more transit related program. And since then, we've had 3 rounds in 2021, 2022, 2023, where we received proposals, reviewed them, ranked them, signed contracts, and managed the implementation of not the implementation, but managed the program, following up with these jurisdictions, approving reimbursement, payments, as well as keeping track of the progress of these projects. Now, the guidelines, which was approved by the board, dictates that an internal audit has to be done every 3 years. So last year was the 3rd year, and hence, we did the internal audit, which was just completed a couple of weeks ago, and is going to go over that effort. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Khaled. So if we turn to page 4 of the document, I think the executive summary does a good job of summing up the work. The primary objective of the audit was to assess the MTIF program to determine if policies, practices, and procedures and internal controls are adequate to ensure that the grants distributed to the various municipalities and townships of Hamilton County were appropriate. The conclusion is they're pleased to report that overall the audit yielded positive results without any exceptions. Norman and Ken and their team spent a lot of time going through all the transactions, looking at all the files and the awards and making sure that everything was in place. There's more detail in the report, and happy to answer any questions if there are any.
No issues.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If we move to item number 6 is the summary of our progress with our internal audit process here at Metro. If we turn to page 4 of the presentation, this is just a high-level update of the work of the internal audit team. There have been 11 audit reports conducted since 2022. There have been 36 total observations noted in those reports, and 78% of those observations are fully remediated. So there's been a lot of work as we grow this organization and we welcome new people and new process to the organization. We're making sure that we're crossing T's and dotting I's, and that these newly evolved processes are settling in an efficient way and repeatable way. We turn to page 6, I believe, page 5. We see the current open audit observations. Happy to report that there's only one high observation on this list, and it has been closed. You can look through the other observations. These are sorted by severity, mediums, and lows. A number of those have been closed. Those are noted in green. We have a number of items that are still pending. These are things that are working through the process, many of which are related to the Riverfront Transit Center. As you know, we operate the Riverfront Transit Center, but it is owned by the city. So it takes a little bit more time to work through the collaboration to get these things done. But again, we stay on top of these, and everyone on this list is making progress toward completion. I feel really good about where we are in the internal audit process. If we turn to page 7, another current audit that's going on now, you'll receive feedback on here soon, is the vendor management audit. That's set to be complete this summer. And in page 9, you'll kind of see the runway of what we have in front of us. We're going to do a complete ridership audit, an AP audit, a badge and access security audit, a tire contract audit, and our fixed asset audit. If you recall, the scope of this audit is really set, and the game plan is set by a risk assessment that's done every year. Every year or two, we meet with Clark Schaefer and our internal team, and talk to leaders in the organization and folks outside to assess potential areas of risk, and that drives our audit game plan for the following year or two. I'm happy to take any questions.
I'd just like to add that we have not, in the last couple of decades, had an internal audit team. Just a couple of years ago, we added an internal audit team, and this year we even budgeted for an additional person because as we're in growth mode, there are a lot of things and we're moving really quickly. So we want to make sure that we stay on top of making sure we follow all the policies and procedures. So we actually added an internal audit team to not just take care of the things that we have Clark Schaefer do, but to also add a number of additional audits to make sure we're in compliance.
Just out of curiosity more than anything, what goes into a ridership audit? That feels a little bit different than some of the other audits we have here. Like, what should we be expecting to see coming out of that?
I don't, maybe Khaled might be able to help answer that question.
The audit will check to make sure our numbers that we report are actually the ridership numbers. So the APCs, it'll check the APCs. It'll check route by route ridership numbers. So everything we report, the audit will look into to make sure that our numbers are actually what they are.
Thanks.
I don't know if you want to add anything more to that, Colette.
Does that mean like reconciling farebox, ABC, maybe
everything.
manual counts?
Everything. They'll do manual counts, everything to compare. And right now what we do is we look at actual videos and we do manual counts, not on all of them, but we pick certain days and certain routes and we do manual counts and compare them to the APCs to make sure that they're okay. But an audit will get into all of that.
Video makes it easier than putting somebody on a bus for a day. Yeah, okay.
Can I ask a question, go all the way back to the cyber subject? So if and when there's a cyber assessment, then will we annually audit our cyber security? Is that how that plays out here?
Yeah, the cybersecurity audit was also a vulnerability test, right? Yeah. So the reason that the report that you see in your packet is redacted because it talks about how we tried to attack ourselves essentially externally, and then also we looked at access control internal to the organization. So we'll go over that next month in terms of the results of that. But we do that on a regular basis. Any findings that come of the audit, we work with our IT team and Pat Giblin to implement changes to our process. That's the general scope of the cybersecurity audit.
I had one question. On the list of audits that are kind of outstanding, I think that was maybe 2 slides back, there was a maintenance one. I can't remember what that was. Anybody remind me?
The maintenance, the labor cost item, right? So that's making sure that we're logging, so labor hours in terms of pay and cost with repair time and part usage data that mechanics will enter into our inventory system. So just making sure that we're getting a sense of labor cost as with respect to repairs, measuring it right before we get to the efficiency of that labor. So it's making sure that those different data systems are coming to the same place in terms of what it actually costs to maintain the bus in terms of labor and part usage.
Excellent. That's very important. Thank you.
Will these upcoming audits, what will the frequency be that they'll be performed?
We typically do audits every 2 years, but I think if we find that after multiple testings we're not seeing any issues and it looks like that the process is really well worn, we might stretch that frequency out a little bit. And what we talked about too is in the coming years as we implement all the new policies and procedures that we're going to implement, in addition to looking at things that are high risk, we're also going to look at things that are relatively new and add those to our runway for audits.
And you know, the other thing is with the labor market today, we've got a lot of new people and we're moving extremely fast with a lot of new people. So we need to continuously look at our processes and procedures as we have the change in the new procedures. As we put new procedures in place, we need to be looking at them to make sure we're dotting all of our I's and crossing our T's.
I'd like to thank Metro staff for the audits, and everything was looking really good so far, and great job of implementing that when it's not necessarily, doesn't have to be. So, Andy, you're up again.
Okay, let's turn to the financial results for April 2024. If we turn to page 4 of the presentation, it's a good month with respect to passenger revenue. You can see the trend over the last 3 months, and we had a strong month across the board with respect to passenger revenue. When we turn to page 5, the expense profile for the month was solid as well. You can see no major hiccups or changes with respect to expenses for the month. If we get into page 6 is where we'll talk about some of the forces and issues that are driving the P&L for April. Total revenue was unfavorable to budget by $789,000. We're going to talk about that quite a bit here in the next few minutes. Total expense was favorable to budget by 2.6%. You put those two things together, and we had a deficit of the month of April of $1 million. We had budgeted a deficit of $600,000, so the total net for the month was unfavorable to budget by $443,000. Again, we'll talk about the major drivers of that change here in a bit. Ridership was slightly unfavorable to budget by 2.8%. So from a revenue perspective, operating revenue, which I mentioned before, passenger fares, came in at $1.8 million, which was favorable by 12% or $200,000. Non-transportation revenue, which is essentially our investment income, was also favorable to budget by $216,000. The big difference in the April report is the county sales tax. County sales tax came in at $8.1 million, which was unfavorable by $1.2 million. Actual receipts, so we're here in April, and we just talked about this before, and we've talked about this in the first 3 months of the year. We are receiving in April receipts for January 2024. What we received in actual receipts for January 24 was below budget, but also below the actual receipts that we received in January of 23. So if you remember when we're putting the budget together, we assumed about a 5% increase in sales tax revenue. That was a projection done by the UC Economic Center. 1 month does not make a trend, right? But in that first month, we're sitting essentially flat or slightly below where we were last year in sales tax, as opposed to our projection, which was 5% higher. So that's driving the balance for this month, right? I'll continue through the P&L, and then we can kind of open this up for discussion on what this means, right? Federal grants were on budget. I mentioned from the expense side, we were in good shape. Wages and benefits were favorable, between fuel and lubricant being slightly favorable, and then parts and supplies being slightly unfavorable. We're right on budget with those two line items, essentially. All other was unfavorable by $132,000. But if you remember, this is the line that has the most volatility. We're still well favorable for year to date. When we go to page 7, and we kind of, if we can zoom in a bit to the bottom line, this is where you're seeing that one right in the middle of the sheet. You'll see the $1.2 million difference, unfavorability in the county sales tax. When we go to the bottom line, in the bottom left, you see that we're unfavorable by $1 million for the month. We had planned unfavorability of $600,000, so we're $443,000 unfavorable to budget. When we continue to the last 3 columns, those are the year to date. Year to date, we're still $1 million favorable in terms of where we had projected to be, because we had budgeted to be unfavorable to budget this year, at this point in the year, by $1.4 million. So we're still in good shape, but you recall that 3 months of our largest revenue source, January, February, March, we're now starting to catch up. So again, 1 month is not a trend. We're going to continue to keep an eye on this. We had a call with Kevin Ruth and Daryl and I immediately with the UC folks and said, what are you seeing? What do we think is going to happen here with sales tax? They cited stubborn interest rates and stubborn inflation are probably 2 of the biggest contributors to maybe a slowdown in sales tax and in spending. But again, it's early. So just a note of caution. I don't think we're too concerned at this point. I don't know, Daryl, if you have anything else to add. Happy to have a discussion about the April P&L.
You help me understand the year-to-date. So that's 1 month of what we actually received. And then at this point, 3 months of
what we had
budgeted
budgeted.
projection. So
Yes.
that's not really an actual right
Correct.
now. So I think it's important for everybody to understand that. So that number makes us look perhaps better off if the trend that's not yet a trend continues.
That is correct. And for this revenue line item, you can see that we had, year to date, we had budgeted 39 million, right? We, 1/4 of that, we were off by $1.2 million the month in April. So if February's receipts and March's receipts continue that trend, we're going to continue to be off. So we'll continue to keep an eye on this. We just wanted to make sure that everybody was well aware that this is the first time we've seen positive numbers. We ended last year positive to the projection from UC by a couple $100,000. So this is a change in what we've seen. We think it's important to keep an eye on.
So
Last year, we were right on, right there,
Essentially.
projections. And then past years, have they been pretty much right on? Do you remember? I feel like I should know.
we have not had a year where we were below the UC forecast. One of the things I will say is that UC gives us a yearly number, and we spread that yearly number. So if you look at month to month last year, there's always a variance. We have just as many months that we're under as we are over. This is the first time we've experienced where the monthly revenue is below the monthly revenue for the previous year. We're not overly concerned, but we are definitely going to watch it, because if the sales tax is going to come in this year below what we estimate, what University of Cincinnati Economics Department has estimated, we'll have to make some adjustments. So we will definitely be keeping an eye on this. Next month, you'll see February's numbers, and the month after, you'll see March's numbers. We're really concerned. We're watching it. I've also had a conversation with OPTA, because, there's many transit systems in Ohio. So we've kind of talked about, how below Ohio has come in sales tax this year versus last year. So it's something that we're going to be watching, and we'll have a lot of conversation as the year goes on with the board. I wanted to let you know that your leadership team, though, is paying a lot of attention to. It is the biggest number in our budget, is the sales tax number.
On that OPTA conversation, is this something that Franklin County and Cuyahoga County, or they had the same thing this
Yes.
month? Okay.
The entire state of Ohio sales tax revenue is much lower for January than the previous January. It's not something that it's just we're experiencing.
I'm sure internally you have this, but is there a way for us to see the the year over year comparison, 23 to 24, and the budget? Just see it that way, a separate slide that shows.
We can definitely do that. And
For just the sales tax?
just the sales tax.
And the other thing we thought would be a good idea, and it's also part of the agenda for today, is we're going to take a look at 5 years. Andy's going to kind of go through what 5 years looks like. And of course, 5 years out, who knows what will really happen. But we are watching what the sales tax does, what our expenses do to our overall 5-year process, so we can make adjustments based on what is actually happening.
And mid-year adjustments on the sales tax projections. Have we ever done that before? Made a mid-year adjustment on the sales tax projections?
We have not, but one of the things that we talked to the UC Economics Department about is if February and March come in below February and March of last year or close, we may have them do another projection. And then we could make a.
Okay, thanks.
This is unrelated to the sales tax, so it feels a little bit small potatoes. But thinking about the days per month, I was surprised to see ridership come in a little bit lower than budget. Is there any? Maybe we'll talk about that in planning and ops, but that just was a surprise to me.
So we budgeted for phase 3 this year, and we have not done phase 3 yet.
Okay.
So it's one of the reasons the ridership is a little low, and it's also one of the reasons our expenses are a little low because we're not running those miles and hours.
I'm sure UC is probably looking at the fact that with student loan repayments back in, they're saying nationally, spending is down. So have you guys had that discussion with them on that?
Yeah, UC told us they're not real concerned just yet. They want to wait a couple more months and see what February and March comes in before they get concerned. But they were also looking at it, and we had a long discussion about what some of the possibilities are. But before we get into, what possibilities are, 1 month doesn't make a trend. So it is something we're watching. It's something we're concerned about. It's something we're planning for.
Just for curiosity's sake, what does some of that planning look like if February and March come in lower? What would some of that, kind of defensive planning look like on our end? Whether that's personnel or not just necessarily the change quantitatively.
It's looking at everything we do and when we do it. We're planning on phase 3. When do you roll out phase 3? When do you do capital projects? When, everything that we do, it's actually looking at all of that and where do you make those changes? How can we increase revenue? Are there additional grants we can go after? Do we do another push on getting ridership up to bring in revenue for ridership? So it's looking at everything on the revenue side. It's looking at everything on the expense side.
It's worth remembering too that this could be the first year where the MTIF, if this is true, again, we're 1 month, but the MTIF amount, the amount of funds in the MTIF would be different than what we would projected, and that'll have an
Yes.
impact on local communities too as we think about applying. So that's worth thinking about. That's separate from this budget.
But this is something we're prepared for because, it is an estimate of what sales tax is going to be. And UC Economics has estimated a 5% increase every year for the next 5 years. But we know economy has ups and downs in it. So this is not something that we haven't thought about or we're not preparing for.
And I'm not even nervous. I think that we've had a really conservative position on things ever since we were able to get a lot of those dollars through COVID. So I think that you're really going to be able to see a huge difference. That cliff that we were talking about, we're approaching it. And so we're going to end up seeing a very stark difference between how we operate in other transit entities.
Yes.
I think nationally, because I even though those numbers are different, I still think that our positioning and the decisions that we've made in all these layers have really helped to insulate us and retain
Yes.
our asset positions.
Thank you. You are correct. That the sales tax number is the biggest number in our budget. And I will tell you that your leadership team, it is something that we spend a lot of time on. And if we have to make adjustments, we will make adjustments. We're prepared for this.
Ms. Gwen, did you have a question?
Not being a part of the discussion, but understanding the tenor of the discussion. I'm glad to hear you say, that you're watching it, staying on top of me. We're looking at the big institutions that are getting blindsided right now, so we don't want to be one of them.
We will not be. We will not be.
That stimulus money did a lot of them in.
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, Andy, we'll move on to the 5-year operating projection.
All right, thank you. As Daryl mentioned, we here at staff and with the leadership team, we spend a lot of time looking at 5 and 10-year projections for the business, right? And we thought what we would do is just kind of share a high-level overview of some of those projections. What we know when we think about the Metro budget over the next 5 years, we have 2 really main driving pieces. We want to continue to improve our fixed route network and add service as part of the Reinventing Metro plan. And then the big piece is implementing bus rapid transit, right? And bus rapid transit, we've talked about the fact that it is a large capital project, right? $300 million in 2 corridors, but there's an operating component to it as well. When you're thinking about frequent rapid bus service, you have to add buses, you have to hire drivers, you have to increase your operating expense to put that service on the street. So when we look out 5 and 10 years, we want to make sure that we have crafted annual budgets that put us in a good place to deliver that service 5 years from now, 3 to 5 years from now when those services start to hit the street. In order to do that, you have to make some assumptions, right? So we put this 5-year projection together slightly before we got our February or January results from sales tax. But regardless, it's a tool that we're going to use every month and every year to make sure that we are on target. We put some assumptions into this plan. We put a 5% sales tax assumption into the plan, which was based on UC's current assessment of sales tax. We put additional service growth of 3% in 2025 and 2026. Those are the pieces of the fixed route network that we plan to improve, essentially the Reinventing Metro phases 4 and 5. We put BRT operating expenses assumed to be $5 million per line starting in 28, and then the second line starting in 29. That is the net expense. So you know that there is service in each of those corridors today. Some of that service will be thinned out when the new BRT service goes on top of local service. So this would be the net operating expense, if you will, about $5 million per line for each of those two corridors. We'll get into much more detail about the operating framework for BRT as we make our way through the federal process. Annual operating expenses. So what is our inflationary base operating assumptions over this period? We're assuming about a 4% inflationary increase in cost. And what you'll also note in the plan is that, you know, we have a large reserve right now, most of which is keyed to projects. We have 20 years of deferred maintenance and capital projects and bus replacement that we're catching up on. So that reserve is generating a lot of income for us right now in terms of investment revenue. As we do these projects and as we build these BRT corridors, that reserve naturally is going to go down, which means we'll receive less investment income from our reserve, and that is planned for in this model, if that makes sense. Questions about assumptions before I go on?
Should I be worried about the 90 million for pension liability that was addressed earlier?
No. That's more of an accounting piece than a revenue or an expense piece. So as we make our way to page 3, you can kind of see what the projection looks like here. I'm gonna start right in the middle with the county sales tax, and you can see that growing at about 5% a year. And you see our revenues, bottom line, kind of growing along with it. As we add service, we will increase ridership, which will increase some of our operating revenue as well. When we look at our expenses, you can see some significant increases in the 2028 and 2029 timeframe, and that is related to implementation of BRT. The second to the last line is our surplus deficit, right? So if things continue to plan, we will probably end years 25 through 27 with about a between $7 to $10 million surplus. And then fiscal year 29, we're starting to turn into the red a little bit. One thing we have to note is the capital needs. When you see the $7 million a year in capital needs, this is essentially the local match required to do our regular bus replacement program and other capital updates, right? So when we go and apply for federal funds, we need to set aside some local operating dollars essentially to match those federal funds to replace buses. So when you net out the capital needs with our operating surplus, we're essentially balanced over the next 4 years, and then in the 4th and 5th year, we start to turn into the red. Again, there are a lot of assumptions that are baked into this model between now and 2028. We feel like we can manage to a balanced budget in 2029. We have a lot of levers to pull between now and then.
This is very manageable, very.
Yeah. But what this does is this allows us with every month and every year as we get closer to BRT, we're going to know what our targets are, right? And this tool will help us do that. And we actually, internally project this out to 10 years. But we start to get very speculative once we get beyond even a couple years. But what we're showing is that we have the framework in place to adjust these numbers every single month to make sure that we're going to hit this mark. We need to make sure that we have the operating bandwidth to put BRT on the street in 2028, and this is the tool to help us do that. Questions?
Good job.
I have a question. So I know this isn't really our decision to make, but do you have any thoughts on whether or not CPS might kind of use Metro for the 7th and 8th graders in the future, given, the challenges that they have right now?
We've had a lot of conversation with CPS about what next school year looks like. They have not committed to putting 7th graders back on Metro as of yet. It is something that they have discussed in their board meetings, but as of yet, they have not taken a vote to do that. As a matter of fact, they've pretty much been pushing to leave the 7th graders, 7th and 8th graders on Yellow Bus. We are open, if they need our help, to being there to help them and to support them in any way we can.
So the projections are just the high school usage?
Yeah,
at this point.
our projections for CPS are based on our current experience.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm a fan of putting them back on Metro.
Any other questions? No? Andy, I did skip the investment fund report. If you would go over that, please.
Yes, in the financial report.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, when we look at the investment fund summary, turn my microphone on. Our total all securities at the end of April was 171 million. You can see the set aside for our BRT match, the set aside for locally funded match for federal projects, our local capital projects, our 2 month of operating expenses, projection for the end of the year. So we're showing a projection at the end of calendar 24 for an unrestricted surplus of $8.7 million. Happy to answer any questions.
Seeing we have no questions, we'll move right along. Thank you very much for those reports. Now we have Kevin's going to give us the fuel hedging report.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So this is the fuel hedging report for 2024 through year-to-date April. And since the last report out over those 3 months, we've seen a pretty significant increase in market prices on fuel. As you can see, back in January, we had a gross price of $2.34 a gallon. Now through April, that has increased 15% up to $2.68 a gallon. So prices have steadily increased over the last 3 months. Conversely, our fuel hedging gains have helped to stabilize that price increase. You can see net fuel cost of $2.53 a gallon through April, compared to a budget of $2.66. So we are still favorable 6.8% on the fuel line, and that equates to about $170,000 to the bottom line. So positive results on the fuel hedging to date. Looking forward through the remainder of 2024, we are 91% hedged at $2.43 a gallon, and we have 46% of the gallons hedged for 2025 at this point at $2.46 a gallon. So moving forward, the plan is to finish out the 2025 execution at 90%. We plan to do that in the next 3 to 4 months. If you look at the futures market, the periods that we'll be completing, they're around $2.40 to $2.45 a gallon. So that is the plan going forward. And that is your April fuel hedging report. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I wish I could hedge.
I feel like we should channel Craig for a little bit, right? And I think that did it, right? We should hedge. We should hedge more. And yeah, that is a pretty big gap between 90 and 14 and 50 and 0. So if that remains I think we're introducing a lot of risk when we're just looking at 5 years, and we've got risk as well. So just channeling my Craig here. Let's make sure that we don't unnecessarily insert risk into the system.
Well, one of the recommendations I would have you guys look at is the year 2020. So we have to be careful, where we had a net loss of $1.6 million. But we will continue to be very diligent.
All right. That's it for our briefing items, looks like. Now, our first action item is the approval of investment fund report.
Thank you. We have two investment reports to approve. The first is the Metro Investment Funds report. I mentioned before, 171.1 million at an average weighted yield of 4.6%. You can see the split there. We've moved the vast majority of our investments into longer-term securities and CDs. That is a laddered portfolio that allows us to make sure that we will have cash availability on a rolling basis, while also locking in some better interest rates in the long term. The second page is the infrastructure investment report. Likewise, we've done a cash flow analysis to make sure we have enough cash available to reimburse those projects as they are completed. And then based on that analysis, anything in excess, we've been able to lock into better interest rates for longer term. We have $115 million in that investment fund with 4.8% average weighted yield. Happy to take any questions.
I make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, motion has been approved and second. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Okay, hearing none, the investment of funds are approved. All right, up next, we have our property and general liability insurance. Julie's going to present that.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
As you know, Metro works with OTRIP for our liability insurance covering general liability and automobile liability. We budgeted for the 2024 calendar year $480,000 for our claims settlements. Through the first quarter of the insurance policy, which covers December 2023 through February of 2024, OTRIP was able to settle claims in excess of $498,000, basically shooting our budget for the year. So we are coming back to the committee asking for an increase of $1.5 million to settle any claims that would go through November of 2024. That's a high amount. What we used to calculate that amount was an actuarial report that we received from OTRIP as part of our audit. At the end of November of 2023, they projected our outstanding liability in excess of $2 million. So we took that $2 million, backed off the $498,000 that we had already paid for December through February, resulting in an amount of a little over $1.5 million. Last year, we did pay around $740,000 for claim settlements. I doubt we will get to that 1.5, but Andy and I discussed it. We worked with OTRIP, and that seemed like a reasonable way to estimate any outstanding claims that we might settle this year.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
This is a big number.
So, can you add any insight on,
Yeah.
on what's happening right now with Kim and you guys on the
In
claims?
the first quarter, we had a large claim. I believe that was maybe from 2018 that settled, which was driving that big first quarter number. And ultimately, we look at all of the potential claims on the books and kind of created a worst case scenario here for the board to approve. As claims come to settle, and the timing of those, we really don't have a whole lot of control and predictability. And again, this is a not to exceed number. So as claims get closed, we will pay that claim. And if those claims lag on to 24 and 25 and 26, we won't pay those claims until they're settled. Some we don't know what the final number of settlement is going to be. So this is based on the actuarial report, kind of a worst case scenario for the rest of the calendar year. Happy to answer any other questions.
No other questions?
Well, trying to formulate a question here because I remember the last time we had this discussion, it was kind of OTRIP was being more aggressive in settling older claims, and we had to authorize a significant amount of money, and not as much as this. And now we have this one.
Exactly.
And it's 2 data points. It doesn't necessarily mean a trend, but just want to understand how we're doing this. Should we expect to have to increase these funds every year, or?
John might be able.
Sure, I wouldn't say every year. It certainly depends on the pace and the success rate at which they settle claims. This number represents all incurred costs, reserve costs dating back to 2016. So we've got some claims that date to 16, 18, 19. This puts all of that potential liability into the calendar year budget. We're not going to settle all those claims this year, but it does at least budget all of that exposed risk based on the actuary report. So I wouldn't expect this kind of thing to escalate or continue, but it does backdate to 2016. So you could almost imagine this rolling period, right, as claims settle or don't, come in or don't, almost like a barometer for where we are in terms of potential exposure dating back, at this point now, 8 calendar years.
So we're approving it, but it'll continue to be unbudgeted through the rest of the year. So if these
Yes.
hit our numbers, could be another concern on the budget. Yeah.
Correct. So we'll show this as being unfavorable to budget for the rest of the year as we incur these expenses. And this overage was also calculated by Kevin Ruth and his financial planning and analysis team when they built the 5-year projection and the end of year projection. This is one of the major differences that we're seeing in our budget that we didn't predict, and that's being accounted for as we make financial plans for the rest of the year and for our 5-year plan.
That's helpful. Thank you.
On the actuarial report, which I've never seen before, so I don't know if I'm reading this correctly, but like, did we pay $12 million in claims in 2016? Like, what is that number? Why is that number so much bigger than all the other?
We'll have to look
years?
that up for you, and happy to send that out to you all.
This document is like, we did.
Yes, that number dates to a catastrophic accident in calendar year 16.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion?
Thank you.
This is our next action item, so I would like to make a motion to approve the contract modification. Okay, second? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Hearing none, this modification will be passed on. All right, last on our list, unless Pete has any bangers to throw in.
I got a meeting to get to.
All right.
How many
Andy.
months am I going to have to live that one down?
Right, yeah, it's gonna be a while.
All right, we're going to wrap up with some thrilling action here, which is to approve your annual resolution to allow the CEO, general manager, to execute grants with the Federal Transit Administration and the state of Ohio. This is a boilerplate resolution that you all approve every year, which gives staff the authority to enter into these grant contracts with the other governmental agencies.
So moved.
So moved, yeah. Second.
Right, moved and seconded. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Okay, hearing none, this report is approved. Any new business? None? Okay. Great meeting today. Lots of good information. Thank you all. And we are adjourned. It's all you.
Very much. If you need to take a break or go to a meeting, please go ahead and do that. But let's roll right into planning and ops. Set the flag. Right into approving the minutes. Unless you've all had a moment to review them. If you have any questions, turn on my mic. Sorry. All right, seeing none, I move the approval of the minutes.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say left. All right, any abstentions? Okay, so we approve the minutes. Moving on to the briefing items. Looks like we have 3 good news. We have Metro vendor diversity and, of course, the ridership report. We got good news?
Yes, sir. Let's start with our most recent Employees of the Month with Adrian.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we're starting with Amber Jennings. Amber is a Queensgate operator, and she's been recognized for her willingness to help in the clerk's office. She's a sub-clerk. Her positive work environment. She does a lot in the garage to fuel positivity around putting together a birthday board and just different events like an Easter egg hunt for the operator. So that's solely driven by her. So congratulations to Amber. Next, our Bond Hill Operator of the Month, Trevina Allen. Trevina is being recognized for her observations, and she was driving and saw 2 very young twin boys standing at a bus stop by themselves. And so she stopped and waited for CPD to come and get them safely to their destination. And so again, she then continued on with her route. So we're recognizing Trevina for her efforts in recognizing what could have potentially been a unfortunate situation. So next we have Tina Carter. Unfortunately, we weren't able to secure a picture of Tina, but Tina is a Queensgate maintenance employee and is being recognized for her dependability and willingness to work with others, strong attention to detail, and her positive attitude. She recently organized a potluck to promote team building and brought prizes from her own pocket to share with her coworkers. So again, congratulations to Tina. Next, we have Bond Hill, Operator of the Month, Tom Popplewell, and Maintenance Employee of the Month, I'm sorry, and he is being recognized for his job knowledge and willingness to help others. He often helps with assisting and teaching new apprentices and completes his repairs very timely in the positivity of the work environment he creates. And then we have our Leadership Employee of the Month, Vicki Hickman. Vicki's being recognized for her partnership. She partners well with other departments, and she recently took on the initiative for reconciling the OPERS benefit dollars for a veteran employee. And based on her examination and review of the issue, it resulted in some corrected benefits for that specific employee. And so he was eternally grateful, obviously, as he looks forward to retiring soon. And then finally, we have Administrative Support Employee of the Month, Elvin Villegas. Elvin is being recognized for his professionalism and attention to detail. He recently worked with a third-party vendor to get our Maximo upgrades done and worked closely with IT to complete the task. And so congratulations to all of the March Silver Wheel Award winners.
All right. Thank you, Adrian. This next slide certainly gives me great pleasure. We know him as Daryl Haley. The region now knows him as a man of honor. Daryl joins an esteemed group of African-American leaders in this community like no other, including board member KZ Smith. Daryl will be recognized by the Abercrombie Group and their Salute to African-American men, this recognition celebrates the accomplishments of extraordinary African American men who have succeeded against all odds and achieved special greatness. If you know Daryl and his story and his roots in this community and his love for this community, you know how fitting this award is. Daryl, the region will know what we've known about you for years. Oh no, this is going to take a minute. You are everything a leader can be. You are everything this community and organization needs. And I know I join a great many who can say on a personal level, you have touched and enriched us and our lives. We are grateful for you, Daryl, and we all salute you. I just finished. This is where I say speech, speech.
I have the greatest board on the face of this earth and the greatest leadership team ever put together. It is not because of my work. It is because of your work and all the work of this leadership team and every operator and every mechanic and every person that washes a bus or answers a phone or is on their calculator or computer every day. We're a team. It is embarrassing to be pointed out when I should be in the audience and all of you should be on stage. Thank you for everything you do for our community every day.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you all. But wait, there's more. Brandy Jones adds to her list of national awards. Chief Communications and Marketing Officer Brandy Jones has been recognized as a change maker in the PR News Top Women Awards. This is a national award, national recognition that recognizes supportive, innovative, inspiring women making an impact in their organization. This almost lists like a list of things that Brandy has done here, this award, how fitting it is, whether it's leading the brand out of a crisis, breaking into new markets or engaging new audiences, or mentoring other colleagues. That's certainly Brandy, and much more. She will be celebrated in New York City at an event on June 4th at the Top Women Award Luncheon. Brandy, congratulations. All right, let's keep it moving. Khaled is now not national awards, but maybe someday soon. He's got some new team members to welcome and changing roles information for the board.
Yes, thank you. I did gain 2 national level employees this month, so this is great. I'm going to start with Jason Rowe. Jason, you may know him from procurement, no longer. So now he's. Sorry, John. So I'm really lucky to have Jason as part of my team now. He accepted the position of director of infrastructure and development program here. He has vast experience, within this organization. He spent 23 years in different roles, most recently as the senior manager of procurement and sales. So he brings all of that to my department, and this role fits him perfectly because, as you know, we'll be dealing with the rail right-of-way sales. That's going to be a very, very heavy lifting effort, as well as the, be managing the MTEF program. Unfortunately, we lost Walid. He had to go back home for personal reasons. But Jason has already making some really great positive impacts. Welcome, Jason, again. Thank you. The other person we just gained just over a week is Sharon Lacombe. Sharon, right. After a long, tedious search for a senior director of BRT program. We were lucky to get Sharon. She has about 30 years of experience in the transit industry. A third of that with the federal government, FTA, dealing with NEPA and other programs, which really fits perfectly in the BRT program. That's a big part of the BRT program. NEPA is the environmental exercise that we have to do for the corridors. The other 20 years are spent mainly in the private sector with other consultants like HNTB, URS, and she was involved in the implementation of BRT projects in Cleveland, San Antonio, Denver, and Houston as well. So welcome, Sharon. With that, I'll turn it over to John.
All right, thank you, Khaled. Let's hear again from Adrian about HR's work building stronger leaders at Metro.
Yes, so we are continuing our efforts to develop our employees. We did some work with the executive leadership team, and then we did some work in terms of development with our directors. And most recently, we had an opportunity to put 84 of our supervisors and managers through a leadership development program. It's a 10-month program that they go through to help continue to build their skills as future leaders of Metro. And it's a program where they go through various courses and topics like management and leadership, how to manage conflict, employee performance, and how to communicate with your employees. So this is an ongoing effort. We'll continue these types of trainings and learnings for our employees. And congratulations to that group of 84.
Let's go.
This is a new program, right?
Yes, this is a new program.
Okay. First off, I think that this is excellent. I really, really think that this is wonderful. This is going to, I think, do a whole lot for the folks that have to report to them. And I'm really anxious to see if in time, if it's 12 months from now, if we see any correlation with retention efforts and this in this program. So do you all have any metrics or fun numbers that you're putting in place to examine that?
Yeah, we do track, and we'd love to report back the differences it's making. And we track retention literally on a weekly basis. It's something real important to the organization.
Okay. I'd be interested to hear their personal feedback as well.
Great, thank you.
I'm also really happy to see this in the survey that went out about Metro's culture. One of the things that I said is that I don't know what we do to cultivate new leaders. So it was just great to see this.
Yes,
So
and it
thank you.
provides both in-person and online learning, but most of it was in-person courses that they participated in. But we'll continue to refresh that and reinforce that with additional courses and classes that they'll take throughout their careers.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Last question, because I'm so tickled. Last one. So 84, I know, right? 80, I'm almost done. 84 completed it. How many started?
So 84 started because
Okay.
what we do is it's kind of mandatory, well, it is mandatory that they participate, and then as, it's a cohort basically, but as new managers and supervisors are hired, we'll start another cohort and pull them together, just like we do with our directors and our executive leadership team.
Okay, thank you. Well done.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Let's now hear from Changemaker Brandy Jones with exciting news regarding service, stakeholder and community engagement, and more.
Well, good morning, everyone. We will be holding public meetings this month to engage the community to collect all their feedback as we prepare to wrap up phase 3 of our Reinventing Metro service improvements. As you'll see on the screen, there are some new changes that we're looking to roll out in August, including a brand new crosstown route serving Galbraith, as well as all-day service on the Route 77 and other time and modification alignments to better serve the community on a few other routes. So on the screen here are a list of the public meetings. One will be virtual, so if you're not able to make it in person, but maybe your lunch break, you like to join us and leave your feedback and hear about the changes in more depth, or if you like to attend in person, we have several dates and locations where the community can do that as well. Additionally, there will be a survey on our website, so anyone who is not able to engage through the public meeting process, they can also leave their feedback through that survey.
Brandy, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
At these meetings, I know people are complaining about Hamilton Avenue. And is that coming out at those meetings?
I'll have to defer to Haled or a member of our planning team as to that specific change.
Sonia, you need to take that back to city council. Hamilton is I'm going to use a word that they use at the meeting, jacked up. It's causing a lot of confusion. And if you look at those little pillars they put up there, they're hitting them. So I was at a meeting and they were just complaining about it. And I'm wondering if it's getting back to us. I see where our buses have to stop in the street because they can't get to the corner where the people are standing. And they hold it up traffic. I mean, it's already held up because it's one lane, but it makes it exacerbates the condition. So I don't know if that kind of conversation is coming out or has come out in the past from some of your community meetings.
We'll definitely look into that and see what kind of feedback we have received, if any. And we'll also look at some of the data that we have in terms of any issues related to that. But thank you.
Okay, because I bring it to you, Sonia, as well. The community is really upset.
And these are the traffic calming?
To keep it though.
Yeah, it was
They voted
the
to keep it in
bikers. There was a
place.
few group, and then they finally had another meeting where more people came out, and I thought it was going to go to blows, but it was really.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Haled, I have a question. Could you tell us where Route 61 is going to go? Is it all the way up and down all of Galbraith?
Pretty much gonna go from Coleraine all the way to Kenwood, and actually it's kind of like two branches. One branch will go from Coleraine to Reading, get off on Reading. The other branch will continue all the way to Kenwood. The Reading one will operate every 30 minutes. Every other trip will go to Kenwood. Correct me if I'm wrong, my staff here. All right.
Thumbs up.
Might be using the 61. Very cool.
Yeah, this has been.
Right.
Yeah, this is going to be a really critical addition to our network because it's across town, so it's going to connect to so many, other vertical routes, and getting from one location to another much easier, so you don't have to come all the way down to downtown.
So it's going to go in the 275 loop?
No.
Because if it's going so it's going to go, you said Coleraine to Kenwood.
Correct. On Galbraith.
On Galbraith.
Galbraith.
One of the other things I'd like to point out is that when you think about our ridership, our system in the past, people have needed to take two buses to get to their destination. As we build out this system, we're making it easier for people to get from their point of origin, their point of destination, and they're not needing two buses to get to and from their origin and destination. So it's actually decreasing the number of trips people have to make to get to their destination. And the fact that we're over 100% of pre-pandemic ridership, while we're making it possible for people to take one bus instead of two to get to their point of origin and destination, our ridership is actually higher. The number of people using our service is actually higher than our ridership shows because they don't have to make as many transfers to get to their destination. Yet our ridership is still over 100% of pre-pandemic ridership. It's something we're real excited about of what Haled and his team is doing to bring relevance to public transportation into the region, to make it more comparable to using a car.
And in support of that point, Darrell, Back in 2018, we did an origin destination analysis, like how long it takes you to travel from one point to another by bus and by car, comparing the two. And we looked at 1,200 origin destination pairs. And then we repeated the same exercise a few months ago using the exact same 1,200 origin destination pairs. And it turned out that by bus right now is 20% faster than it used to be back in 2018. And hence, it's fewer transfers, it's much, more direct trips. So the service is getting more efficient.
All right, well, thank you. I'd next like to share that yesterday we had an amazing conversation with U.S. Representative Greg Landsman. He came to our office to learn more about our bus stop enhancement project. As you may recall, Landsman was a champion of Metro receiving $1 million in federal funds to help support that effort. And so, as you see in the picture, we had a mock-up. It's not scaled to size. It'll be much taller, but just giving an idea of what our new bus stops would look like. And these signs will be placed throughout our organization over the next month or so, and we're asking our employees to give us feedback. And we know our operators, they're the ones that have to stop at these signs and service them, and so we want their feedback on design and style and any improvements that we can make to them. They will have many features, including improved wayfinding, as well as route names and directions. And there will be a QR code on each, so it can. So if you have your phone, you can scan and get the schedule or find out more information about the stops that are served here. There will also be Braille, so if you have a visual impairment, you can get information there as well. And so we're really excited about these new signs and how they will improve the infrastructure at our bus stops. And so we're appreciative of the Congressman's support of public transit. We also did some media after that. So maybe you saw some of the footage that aired yesterday, and we'll get those clips out to you. But again, we are appreciative of the federal support we have gotten for this project.
If I may just add one thing, we still have that sign here on this floor. It's in the planning department. So if you want to see it, if you have access to see it, you're more than welcome to do that after the meeting. And by the way, these signs were designed through the DAP program, through the contract that the board approved, a couple of years ago. And this is one of the projects they worked on it. Steve and the team did a really nice job with that. And
I go past one of the existing signs I envision.
Me too.
Seeing signs, their signs are going like this, they're hanging like this on one nail, and I can't wait.
Yeah.
We're going to replace all 4,000 of our bus stops, all 4,000.
And I should add, in addition to our staff, we do have the steer committee, which is composed of our community stakeholders. We meet with them on Thursday, and they will also be giving their feedback and helping us have that customer perspective for feedback as well. So we're looking at a comprehensive look at them and taking feedback from multiple stakeholders. All right.
Thank you.
Pig abilities. We have heard a lot of great things about the flying pig race, and we know that the Pig Abilities offers individuals with disabilities an opportunity to also participate in that very popular marathon. And we received some feedback, actually a commendation and thank you from a mother who was so pleased. She said that, as some of you may know, she has 2 special needs daughters, and that was important to let us know how impressed her and her husband were with our Metro team members who supported the Pig Abilities event that weekend. They were so much more than kind to our daughters. Jillian, who was with the Met Corps team on Saturday. Julian had a blast riding the Metro to and from the event, and please pass along a huge thank you from our family to these Metro employees pictured here, and thank you for all that you do at Metro that make events like this happen. So we wanted to share this testimonial from one of our customers and really expressing the impact that Metro does in our community to ensure access to all. Bike Month is still underway, and just last week we participated on Bike to Work Day, including an event on the the Purple People Bridge for the Tri-State Trails Breakfast on the Bridge event. We had about 500 individuals who took trips, or should say 500 trips taken, using bikes that day, which if you rode your bike and used our racks on the front, you were able to have a free trip that day. And so we know that biking and busing make for a perfect pair, and so we were happy to show just how easy it is to use our bike racks and help the community feel more comfortable to do so. More awards. We are proud to announce that our marketing team, along with the Hamilton County Commissioners, was recently awarded the 2024 Muse Creative Award for the Black Music Walk of Fame bus wrap. We partnered with the Black Music Walk of Fame to design this wrap and help promote this really exciting event and permanent feature in our community that raises awareness and celebrates African American musicians from Southwest Ohio. And so this Muse Award is an international award that celebrates the best in advertising, design, creativity, and digital media. So we are very proud to share this honor with our Hamilton County Commissioners. And last but certainly not least, you all, if you have not already received it, you will receive an invitation to join us for our annual Safety Awards luncheon on June 26th as we celebrate the best of the best and the safetiest of our individuals, operators, and maintenance employees who every day make sure that we are serving our community safely. And we will have a luncheon to recognize them for their dedication and commitment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brandy. That's all we got.
That's quite a lot. Thank you for all the good news, all the smiling faces. Welcome, and welcome to new roles, and keep on being amazing, everybody. So speaking of that, diversity program overview, quarterly update. Tara, are you going to take that? Great. Welcome.
Good morning. So today I'm going to give you an update on our vendor diversity and inclusion program. So we're going to start with the most important part, a look at the numbers. So through April, we spent $5.8 million with small and disadvantaged businesses. Our total addressable spend was $59 million, so that's about 9.6% the XBE effective participation rate. January through April of 2023 was $3.5 million. So that's an increase of 65% from 2023 to 2024. So that's a big number. So next we're going to talk about our trainings. This has been, next slide please. This has been one of the big issues, I think, for all small and disadvantaged businesses in the region. Actually having access and mentoring, it's a huge deal, and it helps businesses grow and be more competitive. So we just had a cost estimating training last week. We had a WMBE presented. Her name is Barb Smith, and she's from Journey Steel. We had 20 businesses attend. Community partners such as the African American Chamber, ECDI, the Small Business Administration, and Hamilton County attended to talk about certifications as well. So it served both as a training and a networking event. It was really successful, and we actually had someone say, thank goodness for Metro, because I wouldn't have been able to do this without them. So it makes us feel like we're heading in the right direction, and that we're actually serving our purpose. So let's talk about partnerships and joint events. This list that's not exhaustive. We've been incredibly busy, so I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but I will highlight a couple of them. We recently were invited to the USDOT Brent Spence Bridge networking event. And while that was ODOT's, and we were able to talk about Metro, some of the things we were doing. We also are a stakeholder in a bonding education program that was hosted by the USDOT. It was targeted at federally funded projects that were in the region, and we actually had Haled and Steve present on the BRT project, and it went really, really well. That we were able to network with people, DBEs, that were interested in these projects that could potentially be subcontractors. So it went really, really well. And we just went to the Small Business Day yesterday. Chelsea was in attendance. It was incredibly busy. Over 1,000 people attended. I ran out of paperwork. My voice is hoarse because of it. So we got to network with a lot of people, and we're just going to keep going. We're on a roll. We're going to keep building and trying to help small businesses in the region as much as we can. So I want to thank the board. I want to thank everybody. This is not a me thing. This is a team thing. So when you make it a priority, this is what happens. This is what we do. And so I want to thank you, Chelsea, Gwen. Thank you so much for making this a priority and pushing us to do better, because when small businesses win, we all win. So any questions?
Tara?
You did a really great job out there.
Oh, thank you.
Yesterday, you had a lot of people at the table, and you offered. Sometimes when there are a lot of vendors in a particular space, they tend to recycle a lot of things that they've just been known about or known for, and it was a little bit deeper in terms of what you're able to bring to the table and talk with. Because I talked with other businesses. Business owners rather that had come by, and they were really impressed with the multitude of opportunities to engage and the education that you all are willing to do so, or I guess we're willing to provide. And so it's really good, and you've done a great job. I will also say I think with this work as well, here I go back to some numbers. I'm wondering what the narrative or what the story is going to be able to look like when it comes to the collective economic impact for small and disadvantaged businesses here in the region. And if we're trying to put some infrastructure, some numbers around that. The library does a little bit with their makerspace and things like that, where they're really asking for a lot of that feedback now to see what that looks like. And I would love to see what that impact looks like economically. And maybe the African American Chamber could be of assistance with the survey that they did.
That's a good idea.
Was it last year, or they did an extraordinarily comprehensive, I think it was via UC as well, but they did a really comprehensive economic impact study with Black businesses, and so that might be helpful in leading that, and Briston would be really helpful to you maybe.
Absolutely. When we can partner with others to kind of determine, what kind of impact, what kind of footprint we've actually had. That's actually something that I've been thinking about, having these trainings, what kind of impact they're having on actually getting awards and growth. So that is something we're working on.
I'd just like to say, Tara, to you and John, you guys are doing a fabulous job. And we appreciate your work, and the community appreciates the work that you all are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And trust me, it takes two components to make it work. Yeah, but it takes two components. As long as I've been in the biz, I know it takes two components. Not only qualified and committed staff. I mean, they have to have that commitment. That has to be a passion. But the board must support it and be committed to it as well. All around us, we see it tumbling. Everybody's trying to find a way out. We're diving in, and that's a good feeling and good thought. So thank you as well.
Couldn't agree more.
And I appreciate the war scars I have from you, Gwen.
Thank you. Ridership reports. Mark, oh, there you go.
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark. I'll be giving you the April ridership report. For the month of April, our total ridership was 1,145,000, with local service carrying 1,116,000 of that, and Express Service carrying about 30,000 of that. Overall, this was unfavorable to budget by approximately 3% for all service and 3.6% unfavorable for local. However, Express Service ridership was 25% favorable to budget. Next slide, please. Ridership continued its general trend up over the past 4 years as we enter the warmer months. Average weekday ridership was approximately 44,000 a day, which is unfavorable to budget by 4%. Average Saturday ridership was 24,700, favorable to budget by 4.4%. And average Sunday ridership was 19,600, which was favorable to budget by 2%. Local service achieved a productivity of 18.7 passengers per hour compared to the KPI of 15.9. And cost recovery was 12.6%, favorable to the 10% KPI set. Express Service achieved a productivity of 8.4 passengers per trip, reflecting that increased ridership, and a cost recovery rate of 15.3%. Right. OTP dipped in April with a approximate 76% on-time performance rate for that month. And John, did you want to?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. What you see on the screen is some OTP and ridership data from some peer systems, fixed route OTP. But before we dig in there, one thing we want to make sure the board hears is that this team, this staff knows that we have to be better in terms of service quality. We want to be better. We know we will get there. We have plans in place to do that. In short, we want to do transit, bus transit, better than anybody else in the country. What we offer here is some context to that discussion and those efforts. You see on the screen medium to large size transit systems across the country. The reasons these are picked not only for size is they measure on-time performance in a similar way to us. So that's 1 minute down or 1 minute early compared to a published schedule, up to 5 minutes late. That's the on-time window. There are any number of ways that systems do that. Moving that measurement a minute or two here or there is certainly going to have a huge impact on the data. But these systems measure OTP the same way that we do. You see on the screen a calendar year 2023 OTP for these systems as well as Metro. And the ridership percentage reflects their percent of ridership in 2023 compared to pre-pandemic. So what you certainly see is an impact of reduced service levels in other systems, still not having returned to their service models pre-pandemic, and then also clearly a lack of attracting riders back to their systems. We'll remind the board as well that our goal remains to operate at an on-time clip in the high 80s, and we will continue to grow ridership as well as we expand our service and improve our network. We simply offer these for context for those efforts and goals.
Thank you, John.
First time, I don't know, Brett, Brett Gwynn, but I think this is the first time I've seen a peer comparison like this. Is this the first? Okay.
It is.
Atlanta, they should never beat us in anything. When it comes to anything transportation ever. But I think that just for a tad bit of context, it's horrible news. And I think for just a tad bit of context too, though, we are not that I'm saying that I'm comfortable with these numbers as we always want them to increase, but when you have 20%, you're looking at 20% or more in terms of our actual ridership, and we're still hovering near that 80% on OTP. That's something that the numbers just, they show it, but they don't tell it necessarily. You have to kind of read in between those literal lines here. And I think that I just want to keep that in the front of our minds as well, that we're doing a lot more.
Yes.
We're still performing at a higher level.
Yes.
than our counterparts.
But we will not rest.
But we are not. No, we are
We
not.
will not rest until we're in the
Atlanta
upper
is
80s.
not even on this.
Will not.
No, it's the first time we've published it. We certainly will share it.
Share the on-time performance report.
Yes.
All right, so you do share that. I think we need to keep sharing it with the staff, keep,
Sure
with
will.
the union particularly.
Thanks, Mark.
And I would also encourage, and a lot of us are going to be traveling this summer.
I'll be in Atlanta.
When you get an opportunity to go someplace, please visit another metro place. I made the poor decision of doing that as we were going on a cruise in December in Florida, and I tried to use the transit system there, and we were in weeds about all the way up to my neck. We got lost. We were walking on dirt paths. It was bad. It was very bad. The system's very disconnected. Just the way they look, the timing, a lot of things were wrong. But when I go to cities now, I try to actually use a system just so I can compare, and then we're always on top. Even in Chicago, that was a horrible experience too.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Here we go. For the month of April, there were 1,318 missed trips with 98.1% of scheduled service delivered. And as a reminder, a missed trip does not necessarily mean that the bus did not leave the garage. There are many reasons that could contribute to a missed trip: mechanical delays, crashes caused by other cars then delaying the bus, etc. And here you have the day by day. That big spike on the 8th, that was the eclipse. I wasn't here, so. But in general, most of the days have been quite low. Next slide, here you go. Average trip, missed trip by day of week. See that Sunday is the highest. That Monday is high. I think that was the eclipse was a Monday, so that's what drove that Monday average up. All right, on to Access. Access ridership for the month of April was 15,300 total, which was just unfavorable to budget by 1%. Weekday ridership was in total 14,130. Saturday in total was 612, and Sunday in total was 733. Here you have the Access ridership by month, which generally follows the same trend as fixed route. And then OTP for Access rose slightly to 89.1% in April. Productivity wise, Access was carried 2.1 passengers per trip or per hour compared to a KPI of 2.2. And the cost per passenger fell to $45.27 per trip compared to the $55 KPI. Metro Now. Metro Now continues to climb with 6,058 rides in April amongst the two zones, an on-time performance pickup rate of 99.5%, and that is that the vehicle arrives within 5 minutes of the estimated arrival by the app or the dispatch. Weekday average ridership rose to 211. Saturday average ridership rose to 190, and Sunday ridership rose quite a bit to 163. And that reflects, particularly for Saturday and Sunday, the increased service hours. So I believe we originally ended around 6 p.m., and now that's been extended to 8 or 9, which I think better reflects the closing hours of a lot of shops out here on the weekends. So we have been rewarded. Oh, and one thing I wanted to put in perspective, a friend of mine was in Milwaukee a few days ago seeing a presentation, and they showed a chart of Milwaukee's, they call it Flex Ride, that's Metro Now, ridership by month. So Milwaukee has 3 zones. They launched 2 years ago. Those zones operate 24 hours a day. Same deal as here. It's a separate fare from the fixed route system. And actually from midnight to 4 a.m. it's free. They cover some industrial third shift zones. After 2 years and 3 zones, they are just shy of 5,000 monthly rides. So we're at 6,000 with less than a year and 2 zones and not 24 hours. Yeah. And it's still going up.
All
Next slide, please. So top destinations for Springdale. So for this month and maybe the next, we'll show this where the darker area was the original size of the zone. And then there's a dashed line that shows the expanded, just to show that. And then we'll take the darker part out for maps moving forward. But as you can see, the Springdale zone expanded further west into Forest Park over to Winton Road, and then east into Lincoln Heights. And you can see rides starting to pick up. The big concentration in Lincoln Heights, I think that's a seniors living area. There was somebody who was extremely excited that we expanded to Lincoln Heights and took like 30 flyers, and I think that's the building. Yep. The Welcome Suite Springdale, apparently there are a large amount of construction workers working on the 75 construction that are staying at that suites, and they are taking this to the site.
Thank you for the context.
Yes.
Hey.
It's not overnight.
That
Next slide, please. Northgate. So Northgate also expanded, but slightly less than the Springdale zone. So some more areas to the south are now covered, and then further west into Coleraine, covering kind of the admin building and some of the public assets that are out there. So Northgate does carry more people than the Springdale zone, but ridership continues to be quite strong. And as you can see, there's like 3 Krogers on the top destination lists. So, yep, that's it for Metro Now. The last few slides are all route-specific level things. I usually don't go over here. You're free to look at those in the presentation. And if you have any questions on those, I'm certainly here to answer them. But
Thank you very much, Mark.
Barring any questions, thank you for listening.
Questions?
I have one. I should have asked this back.
It's okay.
When it came up, the fixed route missed trips 5 months. There's quite a big spike in April that we hadn't seen that much since like November. We have
Yes.
an explanation as to why that might have happened.
We have less operators. Our retention was not as good that month. We had a dip in operators. You will see this month we've gained a number of operators. We are pulling out all the stops. I mean, we're going overboard in this next couple of months to increase the number of operators we have. We're pulling out all the stops, but we have less operators, and our absenteeism was higher in April than it had been. It is concerning to us. That's something else we won't stop. This labor market's tough, but we won't stop until we get there. We feel really good about where we are this month. Seems to be trending lower, not where we want, but lower. But we believe within the next few months, you're going to see a real big improvement. We've got some of the largest classes, new hires, that we've ever had. So we've got a lot of people coming out of training, and we've got a whole retention team working to retain operators. We're pulling out all the stops.
And with service expansion and other things we want to do, it becomes even more a key part of the whole network. And I think in the fall, we were talking about larger classes coming through and the optimism around that around this time we would see missed trips, OTP, missed trips down, OTP up. But then we had a few smaller classes around the holidays, which I think probably can be predicted. We're generally doing better than I think most other systems. I don't have the data on that, but I think that's right. But we just have to do everything we can to support getting the operators here, retaining them, because that will affect all these different numbers and allow us to achieve the ridership we need, which will affect some of the budget issues on the 5 years. So it's all connected. And those are really good questions to ask. All right. We do have a couple of procurements. Unless anybody has questions for Mark, I could probably talk to Mark all day. But let's go into the Kings Island, which I think actually connects very well to what I was just talking about.
Yeah, thank you. In the area of retention, culture, appreciation, all those things, The board approved last year our ability to have a Metro Family Day at Kings Island. We've gone through the process to get quotes from Kings Island to do this again. We had an overwhelmingly positive experience last year. We did a survey afterwards, and the employees overwhelmingly, given an option of places to go and things to do, they wanted to do this again. This award is a not to exceed figure. The final number in terms of participation for employees last year, the event, this contract with Kings Island wound up around $100,000. So this is if every single employee takes advantage of every single ticket available to them. So this is a not to exceed number. Will most likely come in about half of this figure. And this is for the board's action and consideration. The details of the action item are included in the packet.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I'm going to comment that went last year, brought my daughter one day, my son the other day, walked around wearing Metro gear and just said, "Go Metro" to every staff member as we walked around. And I had the best time. I also snuck into the lunch. I don't think I was approved, but
the date?
that was
Have you picked
good.
a date?
And I cannot recommend it enough. Everybody on the board, come see everybody walking around, having a good time with their families. It's spectacular. So I wholeheartedly support this. I think we have a motion and a second already. So all in favor, say aye. All opposed, say left. Any abstentions? All right, this passes. Consent. And then we have one other action item. Is that right?
Yeah. John's going to talk about our ODOT purchasing cooperative resolution.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Whenever we source goods and services, there are 4 basic methods that we use. We can conduct our own sourcing activity using RFPs or IFBs. We can piggyback off of an existing contract that a peer agency has already let. We can participate in state term contracts, which is a very common way that we purchase support vehicles and paratransit vehicles, or we can participate in a cooperative purchasing program. Those cooperative purchasing programs are oftentimes nationwide and require a little more than us just simply filling out some sort of an application and then participating in the procurement process and paying some sort of an annual fee. The Ohio Department of Transportation actually has their own cooperative purchasing program. ODOT being a very different beast than public transit, we usually don't have the same needs with respect to goods and services. However, in this particular instance, we have a need for paratransit vehicles. The state term contract is out of available paratransit vehicle units available for purchase, and ODOT happens to have a vehicle that matches our specifications for a paratransit vehicle. Not sure how that came to be. Don't really care. I'm just happy that they actually have something that meets our needs. That said, the process is first, our governing board has to pass a resolution that allows us to enter in and participate on that cooperative purchasing program. Once that resolution is passed and the application completed and reviewed and approved by ODOT, then we'll be able to identify the vendor that has the vehicle that we need and enter into contract with that specific vendor. So this is the first in a 3-step process for us to take advantage of that program. The resolution that's also contained in the packet is a boilerplate resolution, mandated language from ODOT. That's specifically what they call for in their resolution. So it reads a little different than our typical resolutions read.
I'll make a motion to approve the Metro Cooperative Purchasing Program.
Properly moved and seconded. Any questions? Yeah.
ODOT, are they, do they have any wording or any support for diversity and inclusion?
I don't have an answer to that question. I won't be able to answer it until we're able to look at their solicitation materials for that particular contractor.
You know, if something could be brought up to the board, and you could bring that up.
What I will say is that it's the resolution that's in front of you now is boilerplate. Yeah, what I will tell you is usually with, not usually, with the FTA specifically, transit vehicle manufacturers are exempt from a purchasing agency setting DBE-related goals for that particular purchase. Since we're using these as paratransit, it would probably fall into the same category.
But they do have diversity and inclusion, the FTA does, in there. We're happy to bring that back to you.
When they said the boilerplate, you know, they're using it consistently and not adding any verbiage that would support our value.
Yeah, consistently champion this, not just here, but in every relationship we have, right? Yep.
Thank you.
Excellent. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, say left. Abstentions? All right, also consent agenda. So I think that covers all our action items. Was there any new business? All right. I'm going to note that we did beat the finance committee today. Just want to make sure that's on the record, and then we can close. Thank you very much. Have a good day.